Hey everyone, you're watching the Esperanza 243. This is the Westing game part 6. I have actually done the math, or not done the math, but I've somewhat done the math. And it turns out I may actually have to do a couple of videos where I read more than I should. Or actually read more than, yeah, that's the term. More than I should. Because it turns out this may be a long project, just like Long with Manavia. Which really sucks, because I was really hoping this would be under 30 videos. I was shooting for 15, but no likely that's going to happen. I mean, we're on part 7, and I'm starting on page 28. But hey, at least it's progress. If some of you are actually following from my Facebook page and or my Facebook profile, you would know that the videos I recorded for part 6 and 7 got screwed up because of computer problems. So I'm not going to tell you the sad details, so I'll spare you guys. If I remember correct, in part 5, we learned that 16 people got the same letter about the reading of the will for that's at the Westing house the next day. Turtle notices that her mom's silver cross is in the coffin. Spooky. Dr. Deer is also there. A whole bunch of people that are actually involved. A lot of people who live at Sunset Towers actually got these 16 letters. One of them doesn't live there. His name is Dr. Denton Deer. Surprisingly. I don't know if he's the one that got a letter or if he's just there because he's getting married to one of the people who lives at Sunset Towers. I'm not sure. And then Chris tries to say that it's snowing, but not everyone understands what he's saying because he has some sort of speech impediment. I think that's what the term is. But the Dr. Deer, of course, makes his own diagnosis, which is pyramidal tract involvement. That's actually where we are. Blinking away tears, Flora Baumbach returned to her seat. The elfin smile still painted on her pained face. Some stared at the afflicted child with morbid fascination, but most turned away. They didn't want to see. Pyramidal tract involvement, Denton Deer whispered, trying to impress Angela with his diagnosis. Angela, her face a mirror to the boy's suffering, grabbed her tapestry bag and hurried out of the room. Why, hello, Judge Ford. Proud of her liberalism, Grace Windsor Wexler stood and leaned over the table to shake the black woman's hand. She must be here in some legal capacity, or maybe her mother was a household maid. But of one thing Grace was certain, J.J. Ford could no more be related to Samuel W. Westing than Mr. Ho. Can't we get started? Mr. Ho asked, hoping to get back in time to watch the football game on television. I must return to my restaurant, he announced loudly. Sunday is our busy day, but we are still accepting reservations. Shinho's restaurant on the 5th floor of Sunset Towers, specializing in... Doug tugged at his father's sleeve. Not here, Dad, Not in front of the dead. What dead? Mr. Ho had not noticed the open coffin. Now he did. Oh. The lawyer explained that several heirs had not yet arrived. My wife is not coming, said Mr. Ho. Grace said, Dr. Wexler was called away on an emergency operation. An emergency Packers game in Green Bay, Turtle confided to Flora Bumbach, who scrunched up her shoulders and tittered behind a plump hand. Then we are still waiting for one. No, two more, the lawyer said, fumbling with his papers, his hands shaking under the strict scrutiny of the judge. Judge Ford had recognized E.J. Plum. Several months ago he had argued before her court, bumbling to the point of incompetence. Why, she wondered, was a young, inexperienced attorney chosen to handle an estate of such importance? Come to think of it, what was she doing here? Curiosity? Perhaps, but what about the rest of them, the other tenants of Sunset Towers? Don't anticipate Josie Joe. Wait for Sam Westing to make the first move. Light footsteps were heard in the hall. It was only Angela, who blushed and, hugging her tapestry bag close to her body, returned to her seat. The heirs waited. Some chatted with neighbors, some looked up at the gilt ceiling, some studied the pattern of the oriental rug. Judge Ford stared at the table, at Theo Theodorakis' hand, a calloused hand, a healed cut, the shiny slash of a burn on the deep bronze skin. She lowered her hands to her lap. His Greek skin was darker than her black skin. Thump, thump, thump. Someone was coming. Or were there two of them? In came Crow. Eyes lowered, without a word, she sat down next to Otis Amber. A dark cloud passed from her face as she eased off a tight shoe under the table. Thump, thump, thump. The last expected heir arrived. Hello, everybody. Sorry I'm late. I haven't quite adjusted to this. Sidel Pulaski waved a gaily painted crutch in the air, tottered, and set it down quickly with another thump. This crutch. What a horrible word, but I guess I'll have to get used to it. She pursed her bright red mouth, painted to a fullness beyond the narrow line of her lips, trying to suppress a smile of triumph. Everyone was staring. She knew they would notice. What happened, Pulaski? Otis Amber asked. Did you pull Turtle's braid again? More likely she visited Wexler, the foot butcher, Sandy suggested. Sidel was pleased to hear someone come to her defense with a loud click of the tongue. She had not even blinked a false eyelash at those offensive remarks. Poise, they call it. It's really nothing, she reported bravely. Just some sort of wasting disease. But pity me not. I shall live out my remaining time enjoying each precious day to the full. Thump, thump, thump. The secretary kept to the side of the room, avoiding the oriental rug that might cushion the thump of her purple-striped crutch, as she made her way to the end of the table. Her exaggerated hips were even more exaggerated by the wavy stripes of white on her purple dress. Ah, so that's why she said everyone would notice. Because of her crutches she designed. Not designed, covered, I should say. Purple waves, Turtle thought. Denton Deer almost fell off his chair. leaning back to follow this most unusual case. First, she favored her left leg, then her right leg. "What is it?" whispered Mrs. Wexler. The intern did not have the least notion, but he had to say something. "Traveling sporadic myositis," he pronounced quickly and glanced at Angela. Her eyes remained on her embroidery. The lawyer stood, documents in hand, and cleared his throat several times. Grace Windsor Wexler, her chin tilted in the regal pose of an heiress, gave him her full attention. "1 minute, please." Sidel Pulaski propped her purple and white striped crutch against the table, then removed the shorthand pad and pencil from her handbag. "Thank you for waiting. You may begin." Chapter 6. The Westing Will. "My name," the young lawyer began, "is Edgar Jennings Plum. Although I never had the honor of meeting Samuel W. Westing, for some reason yet unexplained, I was appointed executor of this will, found adjacent to the body of the deceased. Let me assure you that I have examined the documents at hand as thoroughly as possible in the short time available. I have verified the signatures to be those of Samuel W. Westing and his 2 witnesses, Julian R. Eastman, President and Chief Executive Officer of Westing Paper Products Corporation, and Sidney Sykes, M.D., Coroner of Westing County. Although the will you are about to hear may seem eccentric, I pledge my good name and reputation on its legality. Julian R. Eastman." Breathless with suspense, the heirs stared pop-eyed at Edgar Jennings Plum, who now coughed into his fist, now cleared his throat, now rustled papers, and now at last began to read aloud from the Westing will. "I, Samuel W. Westing, resident of Westing County in the fair state of Wisconsin in the great and glorious United States of America, being of sound mind and memory, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament. First, I returned to live among my friends and my enemies. I came home to seek my heir, aware that in doing so I faced death, and so I did. Today I have gathered together my nearest and dearest, my 16 nieces and nephews." "What?" "Sit down, Grace Windsor Wexler." The lawyer stammered an apology to the still standing woman. "I was only reading, those are Mr. Westing's words." "If it's any comfort to you, Mrs. Wexler," Judge Ford remarked with biting dignity, "I am just as appalled by our reported relationship." "Oh, I didn't mean—" "Hey, Angela," Turtle called the length of the table. "It's against the law to marry that doctor-to-be. He's your cousin." D. Denton Deer, patting Angela's hand in his best bedside manner, pricked his finger on her embroidery needle. "I can't tell who said what with this chatter," Sidel Pulaski complained. "Would you read that again, Mr. Lawyer?" "Today I have gathered together my nearest and dearest, my 16 nieces and nephews. Sit down, Grace Windsor Wexler, to view the body of your Uncle Sam for the last time. Tomorrow its ashes will be scattered to the 4 winds." And if you're not sure about the 4 winds, that's north, south, east, west. And I'm doing it in your point of view, not mine. "Second, I, Samuel W. Westing, hereby swear that I did not die of natural causes. My life was taken from me by one of you." "Oh, ugh." Chris's arm flailed the air His accusing finger pointed here, no there. It pointed everywhere. His exaggerated motions acted out the confusion shared by all but one of the heirs as they looked around at the stunned faces of their neighbors to confirm what they heard. Rereading her notes, Sidel Pulaski now uttered a small shriek. Eek! Murder? Does that mean Westing was murdered? Sandy asked the heir on his left. Crow turned away in silence. Does that mean murder? He asked the heir on his right. Murder? Of course it means murder. Sam Westing was murdered, Mr. Ho replied. Either that, or he ate once too often in that greasy spoon coffee shop. Theo resented Hu's slur on the family business. It was murder, all right, and the will says the murderer is one of us. He glared at the restaurant owner. Have the police been notified of the charge? Judge Ford asked the lawyer. Plum shrugged. I presume they will perform an autopsy? The judge shook her head in dismay. Autopsy? Westing was already embalmed. Tomorrow he would be cremated. The police are helpless. The culprit is far too cunning to be apprehended for this dastardly deed. Oh my! Flora Baumbach clapped a hand to her mouth on hearing dastardly. First murder, now a swear word. I alone know the name. Now it is up to you. Cast out the sinner. Let the guilty rise and confess. Amen, said Crow. Third, who among you is worthy to be the Westing heir? Help me. My soul shall roam restlessly until that one is found. The estate is at the crossroads. The heir who wins the windfall will be the one who finds the... Ashes! The doorman shouted. Some tittered to relieve the unbearable tension. Some cast him a reproachful glance. Grace Wexler clicked her tongue, and Sidel Pulaski, shh. Not shushed, shh. It was just a joke, Sandy tried to explain. You know, ashes scattered to the winds, so the one who wins the windfall gets... Oh, never mind. I still don't get it. If anyone could explain that to me, that would be great. Fourth, hail to thee, O land of opportunity! You have made me, the son of poor immigrants, rich, powerful, and respected. So take stock in America, my heirs, and sing in praise of this generous land. You too may strike it rich, who dares to play the Westing game. Game? What game? Turtle wanted to know. No matter, Judge Ford said, rising to leave. This is either a cruel trick or the man was insane. Fifth, sit down, Your Honor, and read the letter this brilliant young attorney will now hand over to you. It was uncanny. Several heads turned toward the coffin, but Westing's eyes were shut forever. The brilliant young attorney fumbled through a stack of papers, felt his pockets, and finally found the letter in his briefcase. Aren't you going to open it? Theo asked as the judge resumed her seat and put the sealed envelope in her purse. No need. Sam Westing could afford to buy a dozen certificates of sanity. The poor are crazy, the rich just eccentric, Mr. Ho said bitterly. Are you implying, sir, that the medical profession is corrupt? Denton Deere challenged. Shh! Sixth, before you proceed to the game room, there will be 1 minute of silent prayer for your good old Uncle Sam. Flora Baumbach was the only heir to cry. Crow was the only one to pray, By the time Sidel Pulaski could assume a pose of reverence, the minute was up. Chapter 7. The Westing Game. 8 card tables, each with 2 chairs, were arranged in the center of the game room. Sports equipment lined the walls: hunting rifles, ping-pong paddles, billiard cues, a full rack, Turtle noticed. Bows and arrows, darts, bats, rackets, all looked like possible murder weapons to the jittery heirs who were waiting to be told where to sit. And I am actually going to stop there. So that in part 8, we will learn the rules of the Westing game. This is the Esperanza 243, signing out.